Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I got an interesting guest with me across the other side of the country. I was actually talking to somebody this morning, Brent, from Sweden. So I was on the other side of the world this morning. So, and if you're listening to us on your favorite directory and you can leave a review, please leave us a 5-star review so we can keep bringing good content to the people that need it, including the discussion we're going to have today with Brent from Stealth Venture Labs. Oh, and if you're watching on YouTube, you see the video, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our feed. So, Brent Freeman, I'm glad we got connected, I think through either a referral or a booking agency or something like that, right?
Yep.
And you are definitely a serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, angel investor, the whole 9 yards, right?
Afflicted, guilty as charged,
Right,
addicted,
cool.
Afflicted, blessing and a curse. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's really
No, I appreciate it. So you know the gig. We go through lessons learned and mistakes you made, things you do differently, and all the good stuff that you want to share with people. Maybe we want to go, like I always say, back a little bit. Your background growing up, or how you kind of got into being an entrepreneur. Not everybody wakes up and says, "I'll be an entrepreneur and I won't work for companies." We want to share that side of it.
I love the title of your show because I remember when I went to college. I'll go into kind of my background and all that in a second. I remember when I went to college and I did join the entrepreneur program kind of in the last part of my college years.
Yeah.
There was this big debate of, are entrepreneurs born or are they created? And a lot of people thought, oh, no, entrepreneurs are born. And you just either are or you aren't. I wasn't a born entrepreneur. And so I obviously fundamentally disagreed with that. I think there are some people who grow up and they're just like lemonade stands and, yard sale businesses.
Yeah, they have the personality for it, whatever.
Yeah, and maybe they had the family that taught them how to do that. I think that is a partial route to it. But I think what happens is that entrepreneurs are fundamentally people who view the world differently, who view the status quo as not enough. And it starts with a simple of, it doesn't have to be like that, or there's got to be a better way.
Right.
And
little drive in there.
A little, yeah. And so my story is similar. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I wasn't in the .com bubble or in that vibe or anything. My dad is a cinematographer and has been for 50 years and an independent filmmaker. And my birth mom passed away from cancer when I was 7, and then my dad married whom I call my earth mom now. Both were Italian women, so he's a type. There
you go.
Yeah, and she was an entrepreneur, and so I got to see growing up. She was became very close, and so she ran her own business, and my dad ran his own single practice consultancy, freelancer, cinematographer, director of photography.
Right.
Very much an artist, very much focused on the passion of storytelling rather than the business of filmmaking. Whereas my stepmom was focused on the business.
Yeah.
And she worked her butt off. And so did my dad, but it would be 6 months, or 6 weeks in on set or on location and then off.
Right. Project-based and stuff.
Project-based, a lot.
Yeah.
I got to see the dichotomy between both worlds.
Okay.
The quote unquote, artistic starving artist world and, and storytelling versus let's chase and crush on the business side. And I never really resonated 100% with either. I liked both.
Right.
And so I wasn't the guy that ran the lawn businesses and the lemonade stands, but I always had opinions about how businesses were run. I'm like, that's bullshit, or
that's terrible. How can you make
that's
money?
terrible, or why they're treating their employees like that? Or what jerks, So I always had opinions like that.
And it takes both sides, right? There's some people are too creative, like you said with your dad, and he doesn't have the business side of it, or he probably did, but he didn't like it. And then there's the bit, right? So you kind of need a little bit of both.
Yes. And that's exactly where I found kind of my sweet spot. Went to college, and actually it wasn't until I studied abroad. I went and lived in Italy, in Florence, in Italy.
Nice.
And
Ponte Vecchio Bridge.
Oh man, it's just, Florence is where my heart is at peace.
And Florence is great.
All Italy and just
we met when we were there for our honeymoon. We made day trips. We went to San Gimignano and Siena and Pisa and Lucca and all that kind of stuff. I remember there was a guy in the Ponte Vecchio Bridge, because for people listening, there's jewelry and there's leather and all kinds of stuff on the Ponte Vecchio Bridge. So there's this very large mall outside of New York City called the Short Hills Mall. It's like the premier mall in the area. So we're walking through, this is 20 some odd years ago, walking through, and the guy says, "Where are you from?" And my wife says, "We're from New York, just outside of New York." And they go, "Actually, New Jersey." They go, "Oh, do you know Short Hills Mall? Right in the middle of Italy." And I looked at him like, "Yeah." He's like, oh, we sell all our leather goods to a couple of the stores in the mall. And this is, before the internet. Well, not before the internet, but it was 25.
Yeah, early. That's
25,
about
so.
the time that I was living there.
Love Florence.
You had internet cafes still. It was still,
Right.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
The a quick aside, Florence is I live in Italy now 2-3 months out of the year. Florence is where I spent a lot of my time.
Okay.
And they're known for their leather, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was Florence. I mean, Florence is the birthplace of the Renaissance, right? It's a magical, incredible place. It's where banking invented,
That's where the Duomo is, right? The big church with all the.
Yep, exactly.
We were there. There was a jumper on the roof. A guy climbed out of the tower, and he's on top of the thing. The police are there. They blocked the thing off. We came back at the end of the day. The guy's still up there. The cop is like, "You better get down, or we're gonna shoot him down." Like it took their whole day, and they grabbed this guy and pulled him off eventually.
My goodness. I haven't had that experience there.
It was crazy.
It's like climb up to the top of the Duomo, and I mean that place. It's impossible to go to Florence and not be inspired by the architecture and the art. And I'm not like a museum guy. That's not me. But when you go there,
it's just an inspiration.
The history and what went down there, and Da Vinci and Michelangelo and all of these amazing artists, that came out of there through the Renaissance. And that's where I really kind of sparked my entrepreneurial drive. I was there for a semester, had an amazing Italian entrepreneurship professor. It was the first intro to entrepreneurship course I'd ever taken while I was studying abroad. And I read Seth Godin's The Purple Cow.
Sure.
Really outdated book now, but
great
book at the time. And Howard Schultz's, founder of Starbucks, Pour Your Heart Into It, his autobiography. And I was like, man, this clicks. This is like, I'm not the only one who's thinking like this. I'm not the only one. Usually and I was like, wow, you can use business to give back or make the world different. And I was really interested in that. I was always volunteering at the American Cancer Society because my mom had died from cancer.
Right.
And I didn't really understand that you could marry the two worlds. And so I came back, and the long story short, I declared an entrepreneurship minor in addition to my Italian minor. And I joined the entrepreneur program, and I was like, these are my people. Because now I could create, I can be creative, my dad's side, I can build, I can see the world, I can storytell, but I can also have some business, sides of it put together. And so that's kind of how it began. And I joined the entrepreneur club and the program. And then I started my first business at the age of 21, first formal business. I had some things that we did prior that weren't actually entities that failed,
right. Gloriously. That's how you learn, right? You try things.
Yeah. And then I've just been doing it ever since. So that was, I'm almost 38. So, that was about 17 years ago.
Yeah. So I have you by 18 years, right? So when I was in college, I mean, the word entrepreneur is like a French word. Like there weren't programs that you were either a microeconomics major, macroeconomics, personal finance, accounting, whatever. And I used to start all these businesses. But I it's just driven to do it. I just wanted to make money. I wanted to figure out how to do whatever. But there weren't these programs that later came on, and there's so much opportunity now for people to learn. I think I agree with you. Business entrepreneurs are not born. You can have some skills that give you an advantage over other people just by picking it up or whatever, but they are learned, and you can learn how to be a good entrepreneur if you marry those proper skills and increase your chances of success. It's not mean you won't fail at some things. You did, I did, whatever. I think that's I'm on your side of the argument.
I think that, there are some natural born people, just like there's some natural born athletes. And then there's athletes that work at it to become world class.
And even the natural athletes, if they don't work at it, they're not going to be good athletes.
That's exactly right. I mean, entrepreneurship is a developed skill set. It is vision, it's fortitude, it's execution. It's all of these things married into one. It's persistence, it's coachability, it's all of these things. So my journey into entrepreneurship was really just centered around, I wanted to use left and right brain. I wanted to merge philanthropic efforts with business efforts. And I was always really passionate about how do you use business, the most powerful economic engine in the world, to create social impact.
Yeah.
Because this, teach a man to fish model versus give him a fish on this old charity model, I think it's broken in the sense of being sustainable, right? Tax law is set up to encourage people to have tax deductions, and all that's fine and dandy. But if you can embed social good into your cogs, right? Then as you scale, you add cause into your cogs, and as you scale your profitability, so does your impact. And then off we go. That's like, what Yvon Chouinard did at Patagonia, and Blake did it.
Well, he's a shining example. I think the guy I was telling you from Sweden, I was talking to him, he's got a company now he's always been very climate change focused, in Sweden. It was always troubling to him, and they have a company that helps municipalities get from, A to Z when it comes to net zero footprint. They have they got to do it by 2035. How do you get there? So they're building those kind of things. But I think that if we had more of that in entrepreneurship, if everybody it was embedded with them that, not only do you start a business and succeed, but you should also pay attention to the social impact, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems we have today.
I think, yeah. And
People just making money and piling on, barreling over each other.
When I started, I ran something in college it was called the Philanthropreneur Society. Now it's called Social Entrepreneurship, right?
Okay.
And the idea was, how do we take philanthropy and entrepreneurship and marry it into one? And when you look at how entrepreneurship built this country, I mean, that's what makes us so great on immigrants, entrepreneurship primarily, right? And job creation over the years. And you look at what happened in the industrial age, and
look at the oil industry, Rockefeller,
the oil industry
destroyed the country, but it made a lot of money.
But we didn't know. And I live here,
a lot of wealth,
right? Where I look out now on the lake and I see all these beautiful trees. But if you were to go back, 100 years ago, it was barren. Because it was barren because they logged the whole thing.
Just cut it all down.
Mining down the hill on either side, the silver mines in Nevada and the gold mines in California.
Yeah, nobody cared that there's going to be people here in 100 years.
No, and they don't care because they're just trying to feed themselves. This isn't about self-actualization. It's we have evolved so fast that it has created the opportunity to have social entrepreneurship. Whereas before it was about economic development and feeding your families and just surviving in a lot of ways in the bottom parts of the hierarchy of needs. And so now we have a responsibility not just to clean up, the last 150 plus years of destruction, but to change and evolve to understand what business is. The purpose of business is not just, in today's world, is not just to produce shareholder returns. And there's the movement of the B corporations and benefit corporations, both certification as well as saying, hey, we're going to adjust our articles of incorporation to legally declare that we are not just here to maximize shareholder returns.
Sustainability.
Because unfortunately, the way that this was set up, the way it was set up was if you gave away profits in a traditional entity rather, you actually could be fiduciarily liable for not maximizing shareholder returns. Not many people were held liable for it, but it was the corporate structure was incorrect. So there's been a movement over the last 10 years to have these triple bottom line companies be able to actually change the entity structure to say it's people, planet, and profits also. So
in a very short period of time. Well, look, in a very short period of time, several hundred years, we've consumed this planet. And we're doing it at a rapidly growing pace. So, just the consciousness of recognizing that we got to do it differently and more caring from a more caring standpoint.
Well, and this is why
I wanted to go back. I had a question.
Okay, go back. Go ahead.
Oh, I remember, and I don't want to forget about all the social entrepreneurship stuff, but you said you came out of school, it was like 2021. What was the first business that you started?
It was a commodities import-export trading company. We were importing, random. I'll give you the genesis of it in a second, but we were importing steel and lumber into Dubai for a massive construction boom that was happening there at the time, right? Like early GFC, before the global financial crisis really hit. It was booming in terms of construction. I mean, they were building buildings that no one was in, right? They were just building.
Yeah, no.
And we had a contact over there that was on the buy side. And they wanted American lumber, and we said there's an opportunity for us to be sourcers and to basically cut out the middleman, because when you hire a general contractor and they bring all the materials, there's a big markup.
Of course.
So what we would do is we go right to the mills. We would broker the deal to the buyer, the builder, and we would take margin and never take inventory. We'd only own title, so we'd ship it from the mill to the place.
Shipped,
basically drop ship in a much bigger area, and we'd leverage the buyer's letter of credit to open our own, et cetera. It was an insanity run. It took a couple of years to close even our first deal, and then overnight we're millionaires, and overnight we're not.
But it sounds like a crazy endeavor for a 21, 22-year-old kid.
It was wild. It was wild. I learned a lot because that to me, I graduated college. I went to USC and my folks actually had a tough financial run when I was in college. They went bankrupt. And so while in my freshman year, I didn't, in college, an expensive school, we had to really figure out how to pay for this. And so I took out student loans. They helped and took out student loans, and we did what we could to scrap through. But I graduated with $250,000 of debt. Right?
Yeah, it's easy to do today, but
it is. And so I was like, how do I make as much money as quick as possible? I kind of got away from my roots.
Right.
And this, one deal, you can make millions. And so that's what we went after. And it worked until it didn't. It was all about credit and construction, and the financial crisis killed both of those. And what was millions became tens of thousands, and that business failed. And I learned some really important things around that, around getting back to me, getting back to embedding social good into what I do, because I was chasing. And I got away, going after the program of, you make millions and you'll be happy. And I remember we closed this $10 million deal and we celebrated and all that stuff. We worked so hard for it. I woke up the next morning and I was so, not just hungover, I was just empty and hollow and feeling so dejected that I didn't feel the feeling I did when I went to Italy my first time, which was my lifelong dream. And it was like, oh my God, I'm living my dream. And it was one of the first realizations that money for its own sake.
It's just a sale, right?
It sucks when you're broke. I've been broke. That's way
it's
better
like getting high, right? And then it wears off, and you're like, Yeah,
well, it's a quick dopamine hit, and then it's gone. And so it was one of the better things that ever happened to me. This is a theme of my career. Failures have been stepping stones to get into the past.
And failures, you definitely take bigger steps. There's no question about it. You'll learn so much. Hard.
So So there are a lot of learnings in that, and we shut that business down, and then I rededicated my life to starting a company called Roost, which was an online marketplace for social entrepreneurs. And then I have been dedicated to using for-profit business ever since to creating social impact, starting with our team.
So you walked away from the lumber broker company with a little bit of money, and you started Roost. Roost is kind of like a LinkedIn for social media, social network.
Think about it it was more like an Etsy dropship marketplace for brands that give back.
So whatever they're making or selling, and there's a social. So it might be a company that's selling something and then giving their profits somewhere, or it could be all kinds of different kind of social.
Yeah, and we did the research and the ratings and then the diligence on them, and then we said what they do. And the thesis was, if we could embed into the shopping experience, it was focused on millennial shoppers, if we could embed into the shopping experience what these companies are doing that's giving back or making the world a better place, that it would have higher conversion, higher LTV, higher repeat purchase. And what we found is that it actually didn't affect conversion. It didn't really have demonstrable impact. Well, it did have impact on LTV, customer lifetime value, but we didn't recognize it because they went direct to the brands usually to do the purchase. But what it did do is it had a massive effect on viral factor, on K factor. And people loved telling other people what they had and what the story was. And so we learned a lot. We spent about 4.5, 5 years running this business, raised a couple $1 million, but it was in small amounts over time, never really got funded, and hired and fired a bunch of marketing agencies to help us grow, and they sucked. So we built a team in-house, and then it worked. But then we were too late for the market timing to go raise our Series A, and we ran out of money. We had to shut that business down, and it was heartbreaking, but also life-changing learnings. And so I joined a venture capital firm after that to say, I'm going to learn how the sausage is made. And I started advising and consulting on the marketing engine side because I had built a really good, that worked. It just took too long. And that's what actually started Stealth Venture Labs. It really was spitting out the marketing engine from the previous failed business that did work. The marketing engine worked, the business model didn't, the market didn't work. And we've become one of the premier growth engines for brands like HelloFresh and Mudwater and Factor 75 and Home Chef and a bunch.
So Stealth Venture is not the company you joined. It's you had joined a venture capital group to learn about venture capital, and then you started Stealth Venture.
The
which
VC
is like a kind of an incubator, accelerator type of thing.
We are our core business at Stealth Venture Labs now is a growth marketing agency for e-commerce. We have an incubator attached to it where we start our own brands in-house and help brands come to market. Helped Kevin Hart bring a brand to market called Vita Hustle. We have our own in-house brand called Nona Live, which is a live stream pasta making experience with Italian grandmothers
Okay.
out of Italy.
Out of Italy, they're in
Yeah,
Italy?
yeah. We have actually 4
awesome.
studios in these apartments in a small village outside of Italy when it's live stream cooking classes with them, interactive. So you're on
So
Zoom.
people like sign up for the class and they do it at home live with these women.
Yep.
What's it called? I got to tell my wife. My wife's
I'll get you a class. It's called Nona Live, and I'll happily give your discount to your listeners too. Nona means means grandmother in Italian.
Yeah.
Obviously. So yeah, Nona Live, and that's been great, and that's grown like crazy. And then we have a nonprofit, and our nonprofit is teaches e-commerce and digital marketing skills to disadvantaged, low-income kids, primarily in kind of the inner cities, but all over the United States.
Yeah, a little give back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, how long Stealth been in business now?
We've been doing this about 8 years.
Oh, for a while before the pandemic.
Oh yeah. And I took my team 100% remote 7 years ago. So we were one of the first, and we've been a remote first company for 7 years. And
no brick and mortar offices at all.
I gave that up. I gave that up 7 years ago,
Right.
And found a tremendous competitive advantage at the time in sourcing team and talent anywhere in the country, not having to pay Bay Area, Los Angeles, New York salaries per se, but still getting better talent. Obviously that's gone away, that competitive advantage for us, because now everyone is in a hybrid.
Right. Of course, now everybody's out. Yeah.
But one of the challenges I think people are having and seeing is like, how do you intentionally build an award-winning culture? Pre-pandemic, prior to the pandemic, we had, and through the pandemic, we had like a 5% turnover rate, really low.
Oh, that's very low nowadays.
Oh yeah, the great. Obviously some things have shifted in this market, but we've had a few people leave, but then they went away. We have a lot of people go away for like 6 months, and then they're coming back.
Yeah,
hiring
like it sucks out there.
Like it's a little cold out there. This was actually pretty cozy.
Yeah. So how do these? So like Nona Live is a separate company, right? That you guys support or invest in, because they have studios over.
Correct. It's a separate entity. We helped co-found, invested into. It's a complex structure just due to the fact that it's international. We have an American entity and an Italian entity and all that stuff. A real estate entity, to be able to kind of do everything in. But there's a CEO of the business, my co-founder. She's the majority stakeholder. We are minority, and we're the co-founding team to get them to their first 7-figure run rate amount. And then they just went through a really great incubator in Hawaii called Blue Startups. And so if you took like a pin from Italy and put it through the globe,
Hawaii.
It's Hawaii, right? And so they flew around the world and spent 6 weeks there going through a Silicon Valley style tech incubator, and just graduated. In fact, they're on their way to me as we speak. So
let's talk a little bit about venture capital, because I think a lot of people, they have this inflated view of like, when should you raise money? How much money should you raise? Can you raise money? How do you raise money? When is your business viable to raise, capital? You must see a lot of businesses.
So there's 4 stages of capital raising, and with an alternate fifth. First stage is your own money, right? Second stage is family and friends, or they call it the family, friends, and
raise a couple $100,000 to get started, right?
Yeah. Third stage is angels, which sometimes family and friends as well. Fourth stage would be a venture capital, and that can go forever. And fifth could be private equity, depending.
Okay.
But the other one is customer financing. Sell your way through the problem. You don't raise any money. You just use it. That's how we.
Right. I mean, a lot of people should just bootstrap their business. Shouldn't raise money.
We didn't raise any money at Stealth because I didn't want to have that. I knew we'd be smaller. We would grow slower.
Yeah.
But it starts the genesis of fundraising. People think that they start a business and then they go fundraise. You actually have to make a decision of what kind of business do you want. If you want to raise capital from a VC, you need to be $1 billion market opportunity, at least 100 million in revenue in the first 5 years to get there. And if you don't have a path of how that could be feasible or possible, or some sort of disruptive thing in the market, typically venture capital is not for you.
Because it's not worth it to them. It's not worth it to them to invest in a little.
Because if you understand, most people, that's the thing. Most entrepreneurs don't understand how the VC model works.
Right.
Venture capital, just in its very, very high level side of this, assuming it's not their, like a high net worth individual's funds. Venture capital raises money from other institutional investors, what they call limited partners, right? LPs. It could be fund of funds. It could be endowments at universities, people who need to invest money to get returns. And so the general partners of a VC fund go out and every year, every couple of years, raise a fund and saying, you invest in us, we invest in these small cap or big opportunity companies, and here's our IRR, investor return rate. And it needs to be an amount better than what the markets have done over the last bit too. Otherwise, why would they, right? So they invest in 10 companies knowing 5 are going to fail, 2 will be meh, right? 1 will be pretty good, base hit. 1 will be maybe a double, right? And then 1's going to be a grand slam. Right. And so then we'll bring the portfolio returning. And so if they don't think, and this is where I went wrong on my previous company, it was too small of a market. I didn't understand it at the time. It didn't have enough big market cap opportunity. We were investable. We had good metrics, but it was too small of a market.
Yeah.
And so when they looked at it, they said, I can't make the math work on how this would bring us portfolio. Maybe we sell, they put 5 million in and maybe we sell for 30 million one day or 40 million or 50 million.
Not big enough for them, right?
Not big enough for them. Right. So if you start to understand that and you back it out to your business model, say, okay, am I a type of business that has that big of a market opportunity? If yes, then you may want to consider that. If no, then don't even consider it.
Right.
Look at your business model and say, how can I create a recurring revenue stream that can compound over time? So the most powerful economic business model is subscription.
Yeah.
And the power of compounding, you grow linearly. I had 100 people a month, just 100 people a month, right? Every month, new 100 people a month.
Yeah.
But then compounding over time, it becomes exponential, right?
Sure.
I also didn't understand that in the last business. And so if you look at customer-based financing in a manner that allows you to be able to generate your own returns and controls, what that'll do is it'll open up opportunities to either get debt capital through your bank or SBA.
Right. Yeah.
You need it, or you may not ever need it. And you may just grow slower. But if you own 100% of a $20 million business, right? Or you own 20% of a $100 million business, right? But you had to struggle, it's the same result.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
It's just the venture capital is not going to invest because they have a lot of capital to deploy.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of taking these little companies, they'll have thousands of companies, won't be able to keep track of anything.
And now angel investors are interesting because they're a middle ground.
Right.
Sometimes they're okay with being patient. Sometimes it's a lifestyle. Sometimes they just want to be a part of something cool and, they're okay waiting and may not have returns. But you have to be really honest with yourself of what a liquidity could be like.
Right.
Because is liquidity you taking distributions at the end of the year? Is it you selling one day?
They need an exit strategy, right? They need a way to realize returns.
I think what happens is that people get caught up in, I want to go do venture. And actually that sucks. You're basically hiring a boss. Your boss, investors are going to come in, they're going to come sit on your board. They're going to tell you what to do. They have control,
everything. Yeah.
Fire you. Right. And if you don't have an outcome you want to go after with that, then you might actually be making yourself miserable. So it really centers around with what are you trying to do with entrepreneurship and staying true to yourself. Not getting caught up by the programs of what we think we need to do, or being in TechCrunch or going all these. Though there's a time and a place for that, a type of business for that, and that's great. But it starts with, what do I want to do? Am I creating a lifestyle brand? It's not derogatory. I have the richest friends I know, and I'm going to put rich in quotes. They have financial freedom, significant millions, but financial freedom, but they have a rich quality of life.
Yeah.
Present with their family, their friends, they're around. The richest people I know run lifestyle business.
Of course.
Because
that's what it's all about.
People I know, most wealthy people I know with the most amount of money. I have several friends who are billionaires. Some of those miserable people I know.
Yeah. Well, look at it. Take Italy and Europe, right? They don't live to work. They work to live. We live to work mostly in this country. Maybe it's changed a little bit with the pandemic. People are realizing that it's just not worth it, but that's what it was. It was work, 60, 80 hours a week, whatever. And it's, and then your life passes you by. It's too late.
I think because my mom died when I was so young, I have always made decisions by saying, 10 years from now, what will I regret?
Right.
And that has framed my life in a way that has made the destination, the journey be the destination versus the destination is something I'm skating towards. Because what happens is that it becomes that stick, that the carrot, you faster.
Of course. Yeah.
And even when
it should never be a destination. It should always be about the process.
Now, what's interesting too, Mitch, is there's some science that's coming out right now about, I love what's happening with this intersection right now in neuroscience of what happens with with dopamine and meditation and entrepreneurship and social media. There's a really interesting time. What they're seeing is that the dopamine that we get when we set goals and we grind to get to achieve that goal, and we're friggin' miserable the whole way. By the time we reach that goal, it's so unfulfilling. I did that in Dubai.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because dopamine's quick.
Right.
It's in and out.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a sustainable.
And you're miserable along the way, and you're like, oh shit. And you remember all the misery.
Saying,
yeah.
That's exactly right. What they're showing scientifically now is the happiest people are the ones that find joy in the unenjoyable along the way. They have little hits of dopamine along the way. It's like, wow, I really did a good job today.
Right.
That's hard.
You feel good.
I feel really good. I'm really proud of what I just did.
Well, the other option though is stress, and stress does like really bad things to you. Really bad things.
So we are not animals that can sustain life in constant states of cortisol. So there's two types of stress. There's EU stress,
right.
Motivating stress. Something's chasing, gotta run, right? Or I need to do something to get a deadline. And then it goes down. And then there's distress or chronic stress, where you're at that level and you stay there. Yeah. What happens when your amygdala fires and you're in this fight or flight, right? All the time, right? Which the emails comes in, the clients need this, and whatever it may be, boom, all the time, all the notifications, the Slack, everything you can get reached out all the time. You end up in this high state of cortisol. And what happens in the state of cortisol is every other function in your body is basically told, hey, take a back seat. Right. We're driving, including your immune system, right? Yeah. Including your sex drive, including your brain power, including all of that stuff, right? And it manifests disease and all sorts of issues because your body shut down because you're in fight or flight. That is a system built there to keep us from running, to keep us from getting eaten on the savannah, so to speak.
Yeah.
But our world, we've evolved too fast for the evolution of our body. So what has to happen, and I was not a believer in meditation. I'm not a sit cross-legged, say, guy, until I started to understand the neuroscience and until I hit my own breaking point through depression and stress and my life basically unfolding in front of my eyes in just a way that I hated. And I said, I need to change everything. And that's when I got still and I found some amazing programs. I read some amazing books and started to understand what happens to your brain waves to be able to go from distress to eustress, to regulate the refractionary period between when you spike, when you come back down to.
Yeah, sure. Now, look, I've had clients, unfortunately, came to me and they didn't do that. And then an aneurysm when they were 52 and working so hard and never told their family anything, and didn't plan on what they needed to do. And the family's trying to figure things out. So it just, just not worth it. I knew a guy who was resigning from his, I think it was and appointing his successor. Like, let's say he was the managing partner and had a heart attack and died while he was writing the letter.
Fuck.
They found him slumped over.
Are you kidding? So you hear stories like that. And there was a time several years ago, at the same time I was just kind of talking about chronic depression and stress. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was like 30. Yeah. And I had such pressure. Right? Yeah. It was distress, constant and chronic. And I went to the doctor and I did all the tests and they put me on the things and the treadmill and they're like, you're just stressed, buddy.
Right. You're just freaking out.
You're just freaking out.
Yeah.
And what happens is this is the dark side. So entrepreneurship is absolutely beautiful. But what's not talked about enough is the mental health that goes into it.
Got to be real careful because if you can't deal with it, look, there are people you and I both know that should not be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Maybe they should just 100%. Go work for a company, come home and live their life and get their pension and fine.
Nothing wrong. It's not glamorous being an entrepreneur. Right. It seems glamorous on television, right? No. When you go
harder than anything you could do.
The hardest freaking thing in the world.
You got to like it on the bad days. It's no question.
Yeah. And then you got to feel, so you really got to be passionate about it. And so stress and really in like real serious chronic depression, right? If you look at the general population, the NIH reports that about 30% of the 20 to 30% of the general population has some point had chronic depression, right?
Yeah.
When you take the subset of entrepreneurs, it's something like 65%.
Yeah. Right.
And then it just gets even higher when you go into like real serious clinical depression thoughts per week per entrepreneurs. So it's because we're on the pressure cooker. So, entrepreneurship is about if we can switch it from, we have to get an exit, I have to sell this one day, I need to get this one client, if I can just get this many employees, if I just get the office,
Right. If I just.
if we can switch it to, hey, the destination isn't promised, fine. How do we enjoy the journey along the way as we work towards the destination?
Right.
And how do we take care of ourselves?
Yeah, of course.
How do we take care of ourselves along the way? I was just at a demo day in San Francisco, tech startup demo day. 2 out of the 10 cohort companies in there were about mental health in the workplace. Really awesome people. Coming out of big time companies saying, we have a mental health problem, and how do we create fun, engaging apps and ecosystems and meeting stuff to be able to have our workplace be a healthier place for people. So, if we can switch, this is where the matrix kind of comes in, like the program, right?
Yeah.
The default program, we're told what will bring happiness, either through media, society, all these different things. Right. We can switch it. If we can switch it from reframing and saying, it's not just about the destination. Yeah, I want to get there. Sure, we all have goals.
Yeah, but if you blew 30 years of your life, now you're 70 years old, what do you got left?
Yeah. And so how do we like in this moment, I'm really grateful. It's about slowing down, taking a breath and being like, Mitch, I'm really happy and excited to be talking with you about this, and really feeling that, letting your body feel that.
Yeah.
Because no matter what happens the rest of the day, I'll look back on this and I'll be like, man, that was fun. And that was a highlight. And there's a little dopamine going through right now. Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Little wins, little things.
Yeah.
Now, Brent, what kind of industries do you like? What kind of businesses do you see that you guys like to invest in? Is it more about the person than the business? I'd like to know what your thoughts are.
So I like businesses personally. So I'm at an interesting place in my career. I'm an angel investor. I have seen the VC side, being an entrepreneur in residence at that VC fund.
Right.
I'm an operator of businesses, and I'm a service provider to big businesses.
Okay.
Right. So I see the full gap. What I like is businesses that really understand supply chain competitive advantages. And that could be labor modeling.
Okay.
That could be service modeling, or that could be cutting out middlemen. If we can go in and say, all right, I'm going to go direct to the factory, and I'm going to source, and I'm going to cut out 6 people and pass the savings on to the consumer in a way that makes it better, faster, stronger, you'll win online. Okay. If I can have labor that is cheaper, better, stronger, or technology or software that allows us to do a service that typically was done for $100 an hour, and I can do it for 30, but with better fidelity, I like that stuff. And that is across any industry. And when it comes to like technology, I think the service providers, not service providers, but like software companies and entrepreneurs, it really comes down to the executor. First-time entrepreneurs on investing have the highest risk and the highest reward because you get the lowest valuation.
Right.
But what happens, unless you have governance or control, like most VC funds do, we don't take that model. We don't take board seats, any of that stuff. Unless you have control, you don't have a lot of, you like watch sometimes an operator running full speed into a landmine, and you're like, you're about to step on a land, and they do great. And they do. So first-time entrepreneurs are hard. I really like backing entrepreneurs who've done it before.
You have people with some experience. And you said most of the businesses you look at are e-commerce based.
Yeah, the most businesses we work with at Stealth Venture Labs on our agency, our growth agency, that are all e-commerce. And the businesses that I've started are all e-commerce because I know that world.
That space, right.
But we have started looking at some other investments in other areas. And in the upcoming years, we'll probably raise a fund of our own, things like that. But right now, we're really focused on the core business, which is our service business, the agency, the growth market.
Okay, cool. Well, you got a lot to share, and you've had a lot of experience in your 38 years on Earth, which is really a short period of time. You're still a young guy. How can people interact with you? Learn from you, learn about Stealth Venture, or just even learn about, learn the knowledge that you have.
Yeah. So stealthventurelabs.com is the core site. I'm on LinkedIn. That's a good way to reach me. Brent J. Freeman. My Instagram is Brent_Freeman.
Okay.
Those are kind of the fastest ways. I am writing a book, probably will be published in 24-ish, centered around kind of encapsulating all of this and more around how to go inward and really tap into what I call your inner joy, which are the things that make you smile from the inside out, and how to build that so you can enjoy the journey along the way, and this protocol that I've kind of done and built to help me.
Yeah.
And so on those channels, that's where that content will come out. It's kind of all just I'm building behind the scenes. And so,
Good.
you
It's
know,
all
they can
good. It's
email
all good stuff.
Brent.Freeman.
And you got to write a book. You got a lot to share. So
There's a lot going on there.
a lot of great thoughts. So I appreciate you coming on today. We'll put all those links in the show notes for
Great.
people who want to follow you and get in touch with you. And for me, Friday afternoon, you're a little bit earlier. I thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Mitch. This was fun. Appreciate it.